Yeah, I told my father I was coming to Dallas to do a talk for a convention, and he said, "You're going to need a hat." So get a big hat, so. Okay. So as Mark said, my name is Kerry Miller, and I'd like to welcome you all to this very special convention that we're having here today, a special workshop by our mutual employer, Hogwarts Online. For those of you who don't know me already, I am a member of House Minneswan, which was created 20 years ago by the great wizard Mats, and of course propelled forward by the enigmancer Y and the speed demon mage DHH. We have a very fine tradition of two-space indentation and funny gem names, and I expect all members of the House to uphold those traditions. Now, I am based out of Seattle, Washington, although just like Schneems from the hat and the sandals, you might think Austin, but no, it's actually Seattle, Washington. Do you guys mind if I take this off, actually? I keep whacking into things, so there we go. Let us know. The hat will let me know if I'm doing anything wrong. There we go. I work for a Ruby and JavaScript consultancy called Northwest Independent Ruby Developers. No? That's us. I'm also lead instructor at Ada Developers Academy. We had a very successful Indiegogo campaign over the summer. We're a developer training academy. The unique thing about us is we're not for profit, and we actually offer a 12-month program. It's a 6-month classroom followed by a 6-month internship, and it's entirely free to the students. In fact, we actually pay them $1,000 a month for every month they're in the program. So this is not a stage shot, by the way. They were this team here on the left had just figured out OAuth, and everyone else is like, "How the hell? What's going on? You got Facebook to work?" This is great. So I'm very proud of them. But today we're here to talk about monsters. And Hogwarts Online has organized this workshop because we have a plethora of monsters infesting our basement right now. And there's a battle coming. So we've invited you, the members of these 3 different houses, to come and help us devise a battle plan. Because war is coming, people, and we need to be ready. Now, who here has seen a legacy code monster before? Can I see your scars? Yeah, they're on the inside. For those of you who haven't seen it, is anybody here like a weak heart or expecting, any expectant fathers? Okay, you might want to avert your eyes. This is called slide 10. Yeah, those are legacy code monsters. These are nasty beasts, nasty, nasty beasts, but they've infested our home. But there's one thing we have to know about them. All too often, we assume that legacy code is brittle and wrong, that the developers before us deliberately set out to leave traps for us. They were doing this on purpose. I mean, who here has ever written just horrible, awful, obfuscated code on purpose? Okay, a couple Perl developers here. Excellent. My people. Well, when we think about code this way, we're looking at it outside of the context of its original creation. Whereas legacy code is really a storehouse of domain knowledge, right? It is literally a record of every choice that was forced upon developers as they moved along to try to solve a problem. Today's bad code was yesterday's best solution, given the resources and the knowledge at hand to solve a particular problem at a particular point in time. And it's by studying the code that came before us that we understand the culture of the wizards that came before us and how we want to deviate from that culture going forwards. And we've created an ideal breeding ground for these beasts, and they exhibit a lot of these sort of characteristics. And you may perceive this assignment as some sort of punishment for that recent incident involving the visiting professor, the polyjuice, and Hagrid's pumpkin, of which we will speak no more. But this is not a punishment, this assignment. In fact, you should embrace this as a wonderful opportunity to earn many, many points for your house. as we unravel this puzzle, we'll be handing out some rewards. So this mess comes about, as I said, because every behavior that you see someone exhibit is perfectly influenced by a world which has been perfectly built to support that decision. Right? Somebody decides to commit stuff into master, like, say, S3 keys. Not because they don't know better, well, maybe they don't know better, but because the environment let them do that. And the environment being the tools or the people around them. We're all forced to take shortcuts, and we all get sloppy sometimes. And we focus on the details of implementation rather than a strategic picture. Or maybe we don't have complete information about the requirements, really. You know, someone gave us a really crappy user story. Or maybe we just don't have expert-level knowledge about how to build an SOA architecture or implement Redis appropriately, or, God help you, tune MySQL. We don't set out to write code that decays into sticky masses. We really don't do that. And so I'd like to take an evolutionary perspective, which is kind of what we're talking about here today. Code has a lot of, somebody earlier this morning said vestigial code, which I really love. It's that idea of like a creature has a trait, like tails on humans, right? Or the fact that whales have small bits of hair still because they're mammals. And it's totally useless in the current environment, and it will stay there, evolutionarily speaking, until the environment forces that adaptation into the role of a hindrance, and then evolution will pull away from that. And code is the same way. We have bad code, we have dead ends, we have things that are slow, but it doesn't matter until it matters, right? We all, I think we've all written like a really bad active record complicated thing, and it's super slow, but it doesn't matter because that page gets 3 hits a week, and then all of a sudden it blows up, and now it's bringing everything down, and people are talking about, well, let's ramp up more dynos, and let's get a bigger database server, and all you have to do is change 2 lines of active record to fix it, because that's the evolutionary perspective coming into play. So to learn some of the secrets of this beast, Hogwarts Online is now offering a new class this semester for first year and above students, Code Archaeology 101. Now, within the context of legacy code, archaeology is really the best metaphor from the social sciences to understanding what we do as developers working with legacy code. Just as an archaeologist goes out and digs up pot shards or looks at ruins or tries to translate some ancient codex, we too are working with the artifacts of a culture that came before us, whether that be, the developer or the team or the company that created those sorts of things. Working with legacy code, however, the truth is that more often the research and the methodical nature of exploring the code is where the true reward comes from. It's through this analysis that we create these narratives, and that gives us the insight that we really need to solve the problems of today, because those who came before us dealt with these problems before. In the Ruby community, we have a really bad habit of not ever really sort of knowing that there were developers before about 98, 99. I mean, MVC pattern came out 70s sometime. DCI was written about then. These things have been solved before. So in this class, these are some of the potential things that we'll be learning over the course of the semester. And I encourage you to pick one. Pick one and dive in. So in the real world, archaeology is carried out through these 3 steps: surveillance, excavation, and finally analysis. Now each house here, house reorg, house new hire, and house fed up, you all have a role to play in executing on these 3 steps. You will, of course, be graded on a final presentation at the end of the class at the Tri-Wizard Cup. And, of course, bonus points will be given out for dioramas. I have a lot of love for Ron. I think it's a ginger thing. We have to stick together. Souls aren't easy to steal, people. They fight back. I encourage people to be brave, because whenever you're dealing with legacy code, it's scary, and these beasts rear their head, and they chomp at you, and they bite. But if legacy code wasn't hard, it wouldn't have the reputation. So there's some truth to this. It can be difficult to deal with. And I know it's tempting to dismiss wizards who came before us as doddering fools full of quaint ideas, but in truth, resist this, because every line of code is part of a greater story, and legacy people are our storytellers. They're the ones who can tell us, oh, that line of code is there because we had to do this. And maybe you don't know about that, and that is super important to the business. READMEs are great. I love READMEs. I love code samples. I love tests, but these are documentation. And documentation is knowledge, and knowledge is not wisdom. True wisdom can only come through the telling of the story. So find your legacy people, even if you hate them, and take them to lunch. Go out for coffee. Get them to tell you their stories of fighting these demons and these battles, and you'll learn an awful lot. So, surveillance. House fed up? You're tired of things. You've been complaining for a while. Time to get to it. Your job is to collect information about the activity and the context at the current time. Those contexts that you're going to be studying is the overall architecture of the system, implementation details of classes down through methods. Who calls this class? What are its neighbors? Who is it entangled with? Who does it go out on dates with, and who is it cheating on? You've got to find these things out. You can do that by taking inventory. When you get started, look at code coverage, look at the tests. Take some benchmarks. Look at New Relic. Like, how are things performing? Where are our hotspots? I, myself, in grand tradition here, I will talk about one of my gems, which is called Turbulence, which charts churn rate versus complexity to identify hotspots in your code where bugs are going to crop up. Run these sorts of tests. Wire them into your CI so you have a running record and you're establishing a baseline for improvements. Are we improving or not? Are we moving at least in the right direction? Now, normally I wouldn't include a slide like this because Professor Weasley, as I said, fellow ginger, but ask dumb questions. He's very good at this, by the way. Being afraid to ask dumb questions when you're new to a team is probably the worst mistake you can make when you're joining a team. And if you're trying to fix a problem, the same old isn't going to cut it. You have to question the assumptions of those people around you and really come to an understanding of things. You do that through flagging mythology. Listen carefully to what people complain about. What are the anathemas and heresies of a team? If you mention Postgres, does everybody scoff at you? Or Mongo, and they say, oh, you're going to lose data. Do people say, no, Ruby can't scale? Do people say, no, Erlang's too hard for that particular service? These sorts of things are going to inform you a lot about the culture of the team and finally the culture of the code. And I don't want you to be spying on your fellow students, so this isn't any sort of, we're not going back to those days here at Hogwarts Online. But when somebody says, we can't use technology XYZ because they won't let me, why not? Why can't we use technology XYZ? And who are they? All too often we move from, here's a cool idea, to all the way to, no, it's a rule and it's in the employee handbook. Because remember, every rule has somebody's name attached to it, right? Even the dumbest rule and the dumbest decision made in the code, there's a reason for it. When I worked at Amazon, there was actually a line in the employee handbook that said all developers must wear proper undergarments at all times. And I can honestly say the reason was 9/11. When we're exploring legacy code, we encounter legacy process as much as we do legacy code and legacy people. And so it's important to keep this in mind, house fed up. And it's your job to separate which is which. Which is legacy that's holding us back, and which is legacy that will propel us forward. So I want to talk about a little bit of code. Now, it recently came to my attention that we have basilisks as well in the basement, which I did not understand. By the way, I am looking to adopt a new dog. However, one really cool trick we can do is remove their poison. So that's good. So they'll just be stoned. They won't be dead. However, the bean counters down in the potions department have decided that this is incredibly wasteful, and they want us to actually keep the poison. So at some point, somebody made a poison barrel class. That looks very Rails-ish, doesn't it? That's pretty good. And then they bolted that onto the remove poison so that we grab a poison barrel and we throw the poison in the barrel, and then we set that. What's wrong with this code? Anyone? I don't think it is, actually. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. This code lies to us about what it does because of that. There's more points of complexity and lines of code about barrels than about removing poison. The actual storage of the poison is a side effect here of remove poison. So this violates single responsibility, and we're propelling forward a mythology about what this particular piece of code does. So once our survey tells us where the worst code is and what really needs to be fixed, now it's time to dig in. And House New Hire, this is where you shine, because you are not carrying forward any sort of sense of they said we can't use Vim, or they said we can't use Redis, right? You guys, you have the most to gain, and you're going to learn the most during this time. So it's your job to dig into the code's provenance, to find its place in the logical architecture and control flow, and subtly change it to improve these problems. And sometimes finding the relationship between a derelict code fragment and the nearby objects is going to be difficult, but you can come back to House FedUp and talk to them and find out why these things are tangled up. Before you get in there, though, you need to make a plan. Now, plans don't always work out. In fact, most of my plans always fall through, except for the hat. I think the hat worked out pretty well. TSA loved it, by the way. Legacy code monsters love to scare us. They love to jump out of the shadows and say, boo. And then you say, oh, look at the tentacles, and oh, look at the teeth, and it's a yak. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Stick to your plan. If you have a goal to fix a thing, fix that thing. And if very inviting corridors open up to one side, or you start to see traps and other beasts in the shadows, you can defend yourself against these by creating GitHub issues or emailing people about it, but focus on your one target. Shave as few of these evil yaks as possible. You want to be avoiding overwhelming force whenever possible. You want the lightest touch that's called for. Now, it would be super satisfying, even for me, to go down and cast Stupefy on all of these beasts in the basement, just blast them to oblivion, or lock them in a dungeon and starve them out somewhere, and just replace them, right? Because we can rebuild this from the ground up, 3 weeks, no problem. How many people have actually said that? Just me, okay. I think pretty much everyone, though, in your heart, you've been like, oh, I could just rewrite this whole thing, it'd be no problem. And then 9 months later, you ship. Because we have Conway's Law that we keep running into, right? That code represents the social fabric of those who are writing it, right? The social structure of the teams and those divisions is going to be reflected in our code. So the problems that we have today that our legacy code represents, even if we rewrote it, we would still have the same problems. So back to basilisks. We go through our existing code and replace remove poison with this new method called harvest poison that I've created, which at least is honest, about what it's doing. And we extract out the actual, caring about the container and everything. We put that down there. And then we leave a little breadcrumb behind in the warning that we've deprecated this. So as soon as other people start running their tests, because we know they're all running their tests, right? We'll start to see deprecations popping up, and you'll start spreading that knowledge in case we miss one of those legacy things that we've find and replaced for. Now, experienced developers, I'm sure you can look at this and you'll find other improvements, but I think this gets the point across a little bit. This is about being graceful and doing small things. So documentation, House Reorg, this is kind of your baby because you own it now. It's your big ball of mud. So you've got to tend to it a little bit. It's your garden. Once we get the physical and logical position of all this sort of stuff fixed down, we need to determine the implementation details and the edge cases that aren't accounted for and where the tests go and the just the value of this piece of code. We fixed it, but what are we going to do with it next week? What's going to be the problem in a month? The most critical part of analysis is, of course, documentation. And we'll do that through blog posts for internal or external consumption, emails to people, readmes, and hopefully some tests. Bonus points will, of course, come for interpretive dance at the Tri-Wizard Cup. Ballroom dancing lessons will be held every Tuesday. Whenever I start a new project or company or new team or anything, what's the README say? I know how to set up a Rails environment, right? I've done this 80 jillion times. I can check, I can git clone and do that. And I look at the README and I just follow the steps on the README. You know what the READMEs in most projects usually say? Yes. Hi, welcome, you're riding the Rails. Which is great, right? But not so much great, because every single step of setting up a new project should be documented. Sure, we all know that we have to go find Tony, and Tony's got a copy of the test database, and we got to copy it over on, okay, you got to get a USB stick and put it over there, and you don't have Redis installed, and a particular version of Rabbit, and why isn't that in the README of the project for a new developer to check out, or a contractor? I bill a lot of hours for it didn't work, boom. Because I don't know, because I'm not in the building, right? I'm just a contractor. Help me set it up. Get this stuff going. Additionally, every single project and team has its own concepts and terminology and TLAs. So I encourage you to create a dictionary or a wiki or a thesaurus of some sort of grimoire that says, this is what this means when we say it. If you describe the word spec in a different way than other people, that's important, and you should note that down. If you have a TLA, I actually used to have to, when I was at Amazon, I used to fill out TPS reports. Seriously, transactions per second, right? And every time we did it, we were just like, this is great, and nobody ever got it. None of the bean counters ever understood. So write things down and document it, because you are developing a specialized language. Even amongst your friends, when you've got in-jokes and sorts of things, right? You've got a special language that identifies you as a tribe. And as a team of people working together on a project, you are developing your own language. If you're going to be welcoming new people in, document it. Because this is about alleviating and paying forward, alleviating the pain of the developers who are going to have to deal with your crap in 6 months when your code of today becomes legacy code. Another artifact that we can create here is a map. Most legacy projects are usually Railsy. So there's a couple gems. One is Rails ERD, another one's called Railroady, and they'll generate an entity relationship diagram. Are people familiar with those? Okay. It's basically a bunch of circles and blobs. It's UML with arrows pointing to here's the basilisk, and here's the poison barrel, and here's a barrel superclass, and arrows show inheritance and methods that get called and back and forth. It shows the relationships between objects in your system. Now, I love to go down to my local Kinko's with this on a zip drive. Oh my God. Somebody showed the zip drive this morning. I think it was Clint. And I was like, oh man, the zip drive and the jazz. Anyway, put it on a USB stick and head down to Kinko's and print it out on a large format parchment and then put it up on the wall. Right? I worked on a Rails project once that had 400 active record models, and the lines are going everywhere. But as soon as we printed it out and put it on the wall, people would walk by and say, oh, this whole thing, we can throw that away. Why do we have that? Why are we tracking disk drives? That's crazy. Or this piece over here, this needs to be a service. By making it visual, because not everybody is a code person. Some people are visual, some people are kinesthetic, some people are synesthetic. We can encourage people to relate to our code in different ways and really leverage all of the strengths that people bring to our team. Better yet, do what I did on that project. Find a senior developer, or a veteran of the code, if you will, even if they're not senior. Lock them into a room with a whiteboard and order in lunch. And just go through the code and what does this do? What does this do? And just draw it on the board. Draw your own relationship maps between objects in your system to really understand how they relate to each other and make a battle plan for attacking the seams. So you've all done well so far. And it's time to prepare for a presentation. Now, you completed the surveillance, the excavation, and the analysis of this legacy code beast. And I've decided that you've done such a wonderful job that we are going to forget the incident with the visiting professor, the polyjuice, and the pumpkin. Didn't think I'd mention that again, did you? But there's going to be other legacy code beasts in the basement to contend with. We may have fixed this particular one with the basilisk and the poison barrel, but others are going to come up. But I have every confidence in your abilities. You are a self-selected group here at this conference. You are people who, your companies have sent you here because they have faith in you, or you are here by choice because you have faith in yourselves, and that you want to do better, and you can do better and attack these things, and bring people along with you. Because legacy code beasts are phantasms. That's all they are. They're boogeymen to scare our young apprentices. They are really the unintended side effects of a series of choices made by wizards who came before us. And these are the best choices that they could make at the time they made them, with the resources, materials, and knowledge they had at hand. And by keeping that in mind, we can make assumptions and ideas about how we will create our code that will become legacy code for the next generation to come past behind us. And we do not want them to curse our names as strongly as we curse those who came before us, right? Seeking out an understanding of those who stood and made those decisions is a critical clue to unlocking the secrets of legacy code beasts and to finally defeating them. My name is, in fact, Carrie Miller. I'm a whole bunch of these things, but not necessarily in this order. I do everything on the internet at CarrieZor, GitHubs and the Twitters and the whatnots. Cool. Well, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I have one more slide because I'd be remiss if I did not have a bonus pony slide for the bronies in the audience. Yes, my people. Okay, well, thank you very much.